Hey guys, Tarke here, and we have another Patreon build review. This one is slightly more conventional. It's a Righteous Fire build, which is actually kind of wacky because we haven't seen much RF for a while. So he gave me some notes, and I'm just going to read through his notes, then we'll look through what he had to say and what he'd like to improve about the setup. This is also someone I met in ExileCon, so hey Liam, hope you're doing well. I'm thinking of going Righteous Fire for the new league, and would like it if you could do a build review of it for me. I've pushed it as hard as I can myself, but even with ideal versions of gear in every slot, I still can't get the recovery rate I'm happy with. Currently, at 800 a second without consecrated ground / hit recently, hoping for closer to 3k. I've got 2 sets of gear, a set that I should be able to get going for like 20-30c at Leaguestart, softcore trade player, by the way, and then a set of gear that contains some pretty crazy stuff that ranges from good corrupt on an
Oi.
Thank you. Good corrupt on an expensive unique up to months-long crafting project. The idea isn't to get all the gear that's listed in the build, but to have a template that I can try and most closely adhere to. Currently, the build's only weakness that I can think of is the lack of recovery. Without some serious gear investment, it's going to have to rely somewhat on Flask more than the typical Slayer I play who has more leech per second than my entire health pool. Currently, it does about 5 mil Shaper DPS with RF, and another 22 mil Shaper DPS with Bar RF, which is pretty comfortable. Though it's worth noting that most of that damage is heavily reliant on a couple of pieces of gear that I won't have until very late in the league. My goal is to have a build with more passives open that can be spent on cluster jewels while not sacrificing too much in terms of damage. If possible, if you have any ideas to step up the recovery, that'd be great. So we want to tweak the build as much as we can while not putting the points too high so that he can mess around with cluster jewels, and he's got access to 2 sets of cluster jewels. And he's got an expensive set of gear, and he's got a cheap set of gear. So I guess the main thing that we should probably do is look through his links, see if there's anything obvious in the links that we can improve, and then we'll go through his gear, and then we'll look at the tree. Because there might be something in his gear or his tree which changes how we would build things. And considering we're going to plan around cluster jewels, I think if we try and stick to like a level 70 to 80, so we need to cut the levels a little bit, kind of maintain. We don't really want to spend more points in this. So he's got Bar Righteous Fire, he's in a helmet, so it's going to be a burning damage conk effect helmet. Okay. Again, this is with his like min-max gear, so he did have the budget version as well. And it's also Essence Craft for 30% more, LE damage. He's gone for Val RF, Awakened Daily Focus, Efficacy, Inspiration. He's got Cyclone, which is how he's getting his fortified, it's also he's proccing his Inspiration. He's got Vortex Curse on hit, Flambe Despair. I actually quite like Vortex Curse on hit, because Vortex is an instant skill. It's actually really cool for applying curses instantly. Also procs his EE, and he's in Cyclone, so he's always in melee range, and it chills, which is nice defense, so I like that. He's also got a LE Weakness, Wave of Conviction, Combustion. I'm guessing he's got a trigger weapon, which is proccing that. And then he's got Enlightened Vitality and Malevolence. So he'll be proccing his LE Overload through his triggered Wave of Conviction, through his Vortex, but mostly through his Cyclone. So that's pretty fair. Maybe instead of additional accuracy, maybe better off running crit or something. But he's getting some crit from the Inspiration. It depends on what his chance to hit is, really. Yeah, okay, pretty low. So yeah, additional accuracy. I fuck with that. Fair enough. Okay, so his links seem pretty decent. He's using a Comb's Heart, preferably corrupted, but it says he's using Comb's Heart. So his links are pretty set. So he's got the helm, boom. He's got his gloves, boom. He's got his boots there. And then weapon, weapon. And he wants to run Vitality and Malevolence as his auras. Okay, so we can't really fit in any like cast damage taken setups. He doesn't have a movement skill, which kind of sucks. Like you're gonna want like a dash or something. One thing you could maybe do instead of having Vortex Curse on hit, you could have Frostblink Curse on hit. It's still an instant skill, still chills. It will help him like move from pack to pack a bit faster. Because it's instant, it doesn't interrupt channeling. And it means he can use it to get up and down ledges. Might be something to consider instead of the Vortex. Since you only really need the curses for single targets, not something you need to press every single pack. Maybe something to consider swapping around over there. So he's going for 2 sets of weapons. So he's got damage over time, fire damage over time, and again, he said like this is his like big boy stuff, right? So we'll mostly look at his big boy stuff, and then maybe we'll glance at his. I mean, he has a budget set up, so we don't really need to mess around with the budget set. We'll just look at the good shit, right? +1. I mean, that's gonna be hard to get. Maybe you get one, mirror the other. Yeah, sure, why not? So he's doing double trigger. What was the other trigger he had? He doesn't need 2 triggers because he has Malevolence set up there, but fair enough. I mean, what he could do is have the Vortex to spare flammability in one weapon, so that's being triggered. Have the other one triggered. Then he would get to drop the curse on hit. He would lose some damage, because it does give a tiny bit of damage, but then he could move this into the boots, and then he could add a precision, which would up the accuracy, and give him a little bit of extra crit, and then maybe he'd get to free up a gem on the Cyclone. Alright, I kind of like the idea of that. So maybe let's do that. It also means he has less buttons to press. Having less buttons to press is nice because, I mean, quality of life, and quality of life is huge. So let's get rid of that. So he's triggering that automatically now. That's triggered automatically now. He now also doesn't need the Vortex there. So instead of the Vortex, he could use Cold Snap instead. If he still wanted to like drop Chilled Ground, because that would give him Frenzy charges, or he could put a Storm Brand, or whatever. But it's something to think about, swapping that stuff around. We could then put that in the boots, and then he could add a Precision to the build. And because he's got that on Precision now, he could then Blood Magic his Cyclone instead of running the additional accuracy. Because it's like the same like chance, right? And he doesn't really need much mana because his only mana source is the
Steam, dude!
Thank you very much, sir. The gifted sub. Really appreciate that, Shadow. His only mana cost is the Cyclone, so by putting Blood Magic on there, it also means he can run reduced regen stuff. So it just gives him less things to worry about. So let's just shove Blood Magic on there. Alternatively, he could not run Precision. He could keep the accuracy there, and he could just add a Flame Dash or something, so he's got like easier movement, right? So that's just a small thing. You think of using Wind Shriek boots for additional curse. We'll look into what Conqueror crafted boots you can get instead, but fair. You can get fire damage over time also, and you can get regen on gloves. Fair enough. And then he's going for some flat lightning damage somewhere on his jewelry. That's how he's proccing the Cyclone to do EE for him. Then just life, some resist, some area of effects, some LE damage, some frenzy charges. Okay, well, actually, there's not really... These seem like pretty insane, but he doesn't need the AoE. The only thing he actually really wants on here, which affects his damage, is the LE damage and the frenzy craft. And one of them is a craft, and one he can just hit, so that's kind of fair enough. Life recovery rate is important. And he wants to stack life regenerating flask effect. Okay. And then he'll be stacking some life regeneration on his jewels. You can get life regeneration while moving on Abyssal Jewels, and he said he wanted to just up the regeneration, so that's one thing he could do. So let's just edit that for now. And he's always moving. Oh, is that a suffix? Life regeneration while moving? I mean, he can get resist elsewhere. He could just go all in. Because he's just trying to push his regen as hard as possible. Bottled Faith, okay. Cinder Solo with life regen. Soul. What's he using the Soul Ripper for? Doesn't even actually have a. Oh, he's using it just to have higher ups from the Vol RF. That seems a bit unnecessary, but okay. And then Quicksilver of Warding and a Blood of the Karui. Right. I'm gonna say drop the, Soul Ripper. He will lose a big chunk of damage, but it's not that realistic to maintain it. Also, because of his current setup, he doesn't have a Quicksilver of movement speed, and by clearing his maps faster, he'll make up for any lost damage during running the map itself, if that makes sense. Like, the time he's gaining from the Val RF, he's losing on the map, so we're going to drop the Soul Ripper. Now we can run a Quicksilver of Adrenaline. Boink, shove that up there. And now he's got a open defensive flask. He can run a magic flask here of warding. So he could go for a silver flask if he really wants to just like push that zoom, make sure he's maintaining it. Otherwise, he could just go for like a basalt or a stib knight would be really good because he doesn't have blind in his build and he's always like in melee range, and stib knight's got very good uptime. So that'd be a very big defensive boost to him, and that way he'd also have very nice uptime on his, well, he'd just have good uptime on his stuff. I didn't see where he was getting freeze removal from either, which is kind of important. I know he's got a lot of life, so he's got like pretty good thresholds and stuff. But yeah, you might kind of want to get into that. I'll be reviewing all the new stuff they've announced after this build review, Shadow. And his ideal watch... Okay, right. When he said, like, mirror tier gear, you're not gonna get an ideal watch. Like, that's a bit... Yeah, you're not gonna get a life per second, life recovery, and dot multi. Like, that's a bit yikes. So let's just say he's got the budget Watcher's Eye. Like, I can put up with some, like, mirror tier gear, but you're not going to get the perfect Watcher's Eye. No. Okay. And again, if all he cares about is getting as much regen per second, which is said.
Dude!
Thank you, Big Tabs, for the Twitch Rhyme. Really, he should just be stacking life regeneration abyssal jewels everywhere. So let's do that. And the good thing about that is if he stacks enough of them, he can have like, he can shove Onslaught on some, he can have phasing on another. And he could also use like murderous jewels, which have damage if you've killed recently, so they're still giving him some damage while he's clearing. And he could also get his flat elemental damage to attacks there, which would free up a slot on his rings. So he could then get another offensive or defensive prefix. So even though his damage is going down, we're pushing his recovery up, and we're freeing up slots on his gear. So yeah, he's going to want a at least one jewel. So let's just make one blind today. Murderous jewel with we'll just say cold to attacks, since he was using vortex. We'll just stick to one element, not that it matters, but we'll just stick to that. Shove some life on there, just say 35 life. I don't like making like mirror gear, because like making mirror gear, it's a bit unrealistic. But getting like a 1% life regen, just like solid life thing, very reasonable. And he could have like Onslaught or something on his final thing here, or resist if he's really starving for resists. So let's just say he's got like a, you know, like a decent Onslaught thing, right? So let's shove that in instead of there, and that's like realistic. So now let's have a look at what stat he's gained access to. So he can't have fire damage. That would be a no-go. He could be able to craft something cool, like he could multi-mod possibly. So let's have a look at PvDB crafting and see if there's anything cool prefix-wise he could shove on his rings. This is kind of an interesting one, since he's like, hey, I don't care if this is like mirror gear. So we're just going for like the hypothetical Biss, which is kind of interesting. experience game. It's actually not that much there. Going for reduced mana cost could be kind of decent if he doesn't want to go Blood Magic on a Cyclone. Just generic increased damage could also be a vibe. But anyway, it makes his gear slightly more obtainable, so it's whatever. So we'll just remove that. And you can shove something else in there. Right. So how's he getting like freeze removal and all this other stuff? So I'm not seeing that anywhere. So you want freeze removal. Freeze removal is kind of important. He's a Jug. Okay, fair. Jug over Chieftain? Out of interest. Because he said he just wanted as much regen as possible. It's out of interest. Let's just see like what the regen's like between the two. And you do that. 3.4k. 14.8. What did he have before? I can't remember exactly what notes he took. It is, okay. So he would lose out on Unstoppable. Unstoppable is a really nice node. Really good. The whole like not being slowed and everything is great. The movement speed stuff is really good. Just getting to ignore a bunch of ailment stuff from it is really cool. He gets some regen, he gets some fizz damage as a regen, he gets some just generic reduced. He gets some chaos res. I'd be kind of tempted to go Chieftain. He's playing softcore and he's got like a lot of life going on. He'd get more recovery. He said he wanted more recovery. And then his recovery like shoots way up whenever he takes damage, because he's always going to take fire damage because he's got that fizz taken as fire. So his damage goes up. He also gets covered in ash, which is a huge DPS increase. And where's have you been hit? Have you been hit recently? Have you taken fire damage recently? So you can see his recovery shoots up to like 4.8. So he's got that 3.4 that he wanted. Like he said he wanted that 3.4. So I don't know, I think Chieftain's like the no-brainer. So his damage goes up to make up for some of the changes we've made. If you wanted to shove that Soul Ripper back on and just like, oh, look at my DPS numbers. Ooh, you know, you can still do that. He would now need to worry about freeze, which kind of sucks. But he could always craft it on... I don't know how good the Wind Streak boots are, to be completely honest with you. And if he's crafting like mirror tier gear, he could just get +1. Could just get +1 on it. He could anoint it instead of growth and decay. Like, I know he's already got that there. Interesting. Okay, maybe not mess around that. Maybe he has to get freeze on a flask instead. Well, we can come back to that. We can come back to that. Right. So optimizing the tree. It really bothers me not taking life nodes. There's not really that much damage in that cluster. Let's just go for normal RF. It's like 400k, but it's only like 1.5 per point. Isn't that big of a deal. I'd sooner like do something kind of like that into that and getting radius, because that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. Yeah, it gave him access to a 2-point jewel, but like you kind of want plus AoE. Plus AoE is huge quality of life. It still gives him some damage. So you want to keep the points as low as possible. You could also just go for these points, like that's 1.7 per point versus that was 1.5 per point, so that was just more damage per point. So that was just better. That's not efficient. Like, I know you're struggling for resists, but like, those aren't efficient points. If you want to route that way, then let's change the routing round, and instead of coming up that way, let's do something kind of like this. You don't really need to route that way. You could route that way. He's okay. We need to get rid of some of these 3-point, because you're not going to go for 2 3-point duels, especially when you're like skipping out on 2-point duels. So let's say that he takes that one because he's rooting up for that. I mean, they're both whatever. You definitely want to come that way, so you could go. You can serve sending 3 points this way. He could spend 1 extra point and route through damage. He's also struggling for resist, so let's do that. So he's getting some damage. And he's getting some resist because he was struggling for resists a little bit. Although he struggles to resist a lot less if he's going Chieftain, which is chill. And if he's not struggling for resist at all, you can drop this stuff. And then you could grab Soul of Steel, which is huge defense. And because it gives you more max fire res, it will boost your regen a little bit, which is kind of cool. It feels weird not taking Soul of Steel when you're this close to it. So you kind of want to be close to it. We've put the points up, which is kind of bad. But we've put his life up by like a K, which is kind of good. I think going for just every single regen node is unnecessary. You just want to be going for what's efficient. Especially since we've, like, by stopping Chieftain, he gained so much regen. Like, he said he wanted, like, 3k positive, or he's now got 3.8k. So I feel like we can drop some of the less efficient ones. Like, this is 1.8 for 3 points and 5% life. It's decent. He's not using, like, Molten Shell or anything, so it's, like, less... Like, it's less efficient scaling all the armor. So I'd probably be... I would much sooner drop stuff like this. And, like, not taking the full life Chaos Res cluster feels really weird to me with how spooky Chaos damage is. Like, Chaos damage is really spooky. Like, big spookers. Right. Also, leaving open life nodes just bothers me, but anyway. We need to take the points down, though. I've added points, and I said I was going to make the points lower. Oh, yeah. If you feel like you really don't need the Soul of Steel, because you're just like, I'm a softcore boy, I don't care, then drop these points and route through this. Also, if you're going to route along the outside of the tree, you can just take Resolute Technique, and if you take Resolute... Oh, no, because then you can't deal crits, never mind. Ignore what I said about that, ignore that. He doesn't need the AoE here, but it gives him +1 radius, which is kind of big. Like, I always feel bad not taking +1 AoE for 1 point, but you don't have to take it. But I would. I really would. I'm curious, with his, like, budget gear, how much damage did he do and how much regen does he have? His DPS goes down quite a lot. His DPS goes down quite a lot. Still has 2k positive regen with his, like, budget Leaguestart stuff. Which is pretty decent, to be fair. Pretty decent. So, right. Is the Tricurse thing a meme? It depends what he wants to do with the build, right? Like, it's kind of what I was talking about earlier with the whole Quicksilver thing. Like, if you're clearing the map faster, then you kind of make up for the time you lost against the boss. Also, one thing important to note in Delirium, as Ziggy confirmed on last Bay class, with the way that Delirium functions, as long as you tag the boss before the Delirium event finishes, you don't lose the encounter, right? So you still like keep the encounter going. So you don't necessarily need to be like, ugh, one shot. You know what I mean? I would definitely take Soul of Steel, but if you were like, I just want to be like super budget, you could route this way out of your tree, and then you get like a stupid amount of just like base resist on the tree. Getting loads of resist on the tree is kind of nice. Like just having so much just like passive resistances is pretty big. It doesn't really seem worth 3 points, but it's kind of whatever. The one thing I don't like about having so much of your damage tied into curse, as someone points out in chat, is you then get really screwed over by hexproof. And the thing is when you've got a build that doesn't like running like no regen maps, doesn't want to run minus max. If you like, you don't want to keep adding like map mods onto a build. So even though your damage would drop, I would be very tempted to shy away from the like triple curse setup. I would be much more tempted to just go for like, I think dual curse on tree is fine, but I think going like triple curse, I feel like yes, like your numbers are gonna drop, but they're not gonna drop that much. Like you're still gonna have over 1 million with your budget setup, and you're still gonna have like 4 million Valarath on your budget setup. Just go occultist. He could just go occultist, but by freeing up his boots, he could then do some kind of interesting things. He could gain a bunch of movement speed. This guy is very much open to the idea of going for super min-max stuff. So he could then go for like Tailwind, since he will be critting fairly regularly with Cyclone and his triggered spells, and the fact we're like running Precision and all this other stuff. He could get some more life regen. This boy really likes, not that life regen, but he could fossil craft life regen, which he's a big fan of. He could grab Fortify from Elder, and then he could move a Cyclone in there and free up a slot. He could get some... he doesn't need Endurance Charge on kill. He gets some... The main thing which would be nice about for freeing up the boot slot is he could then craft Cannot Be Frozen on there, since we swapped him from Jug to Chieftain, which would be really big. And if he was like multi-modding, he could have that, and then he could have increased damage outside of Vol skill. Like when you're in Vol skill lockout, that 60% increased damage is so big. Where is it? Crafted. Yeah, 60% increased non-Vol skill damage. So like you press Vol RF, which is like big DPS, and then your RF gains a massive DPS increase. It's huge, huge, huge. That could be really interesting. He could also even craft like Chance to Avoid Ailments in a bunch of slots, but that makes his gearing kind of difficult, so maybe not. But I think going for like just some crafted boots would be kind of cool. You could then also go for some incursion stuff, possibly. He could go for life regen stuff, as you said, from Delve. He could go for another Abyssal socket. So you could go for like, you know, life regen, Abyssal socket. We did open up a socket on his gear, so you could go like crazy on the life regen. Options. He could get +1 endurance charge from Warlords. Could just get more life regen from Warlords. So, you know, I think going for some, just like some solid movement speed life boots with some life regen. It's pretty solid. So let's just craft him some basic booties. And he could just get some Chaos Res, because we dropped some Chaos Res from not being a Jug, so we could shove some Chaos Res on his boots as well. So he's, you know, there's like a lot of things that you could do there. But like his main thing was like, he could also go for socket attacks to reduce mana cost and shove his Cyclone in the boots. Lots of options, but he really likes his life regen. He really, really likes his life regen. which was where? I don't know what the movement speed. I mean, this side would probably craft his 35% movement speed beats, but whatever. Shove some tier 2 life rolls on there. That's flat life regen. Where was that? Was some life regen. So he gains a bunch of life regen, and then we could add the crafted freeze or vile skills or whatever. So he wants to do deeps, he could do that. And it's not saying that, but like 6 increase damage kind of big. I don't know. Go for something kind of like that. He also gains a little bit of movement speed, which is nice. But you could it gives him more slots to craft resists on as well. I mean, by going for like this like budget tree that we went for, like through every single resist node to man, I don't think he's ever gonna really struggle with resists. So yeah, I don't know. I would definitely go through more AoE. Like, definitely go through more AoE. Also, if you're planning on cluster jewels, you need to have one of these jewels as being empty. So let's remove that. And let's put that there, because you need to have an empty jewel there, right? So now we need to trim the points a bit, because 85 is still a little high. That's just very efficient damage. Like 2.5 damage per point is really good. Really, really good. You're less dependent on endurance charges now. So you could maybe even drop all of this. Takes you level 76. Put the points in there instead. And he's still got like 7k life with his budget gear. And his recovery is a lot higher than it was. Like his budget gear recovery is kind of like what he had on his like min-max setup. And then if we went back to his weird min-max setup, which is like kind of insane. And I would definitely go for Soul of Steel. Like 100%. He gets his damage up, and he's got the 3k regen. And I would really go for anything that gave him +1. I'd really go for anything which was +1. Yeah, you kind of want to take that. What we have seen from the cluster jewels, which is kind of interesting, is one of the jewels gave. Let's take that life note. One of the jewels gave +2 to max fire, and it gave I think it was +2 max fire, 1% life regen. And if you don't know, you can stack notables, so you can't get the same multiple times in one jewel. But if he had a small, a medium, and a large jewel, he could get that notable 3 times. So that would be 6 max fire res and 3% life regen. So if he then had a max fire of 83, his regen would shoot way the hell up. Also, if he wasn't using, like, he'll lose damage by not going double weapon, but if he was just use like a Sapphal's frame, how much regen would he gain? Oh, not that much actually. You'd only gain 200. Okay, that's kind of whatever. So yeah, and he was onto the 9th growth indicator, which gives him +145. Well, I would give him not that much because he's already got enough degen. Yeah, so basically, to summarize, this dude's gear is kind of silly, but using his, like, baby gear, which his baby gear is still pretty good. Like, his budget gear is pretty solid. Again, I wouldn't recommend the win streaks. I think the win streaks, well, you'll just screw yourself too much, and you'll have the issue that you'll be like, hey, map mods, constantly have to reroll loads of stuff. Also, by doing that, it frees up another gem slot. Freeing up other gem slots is really big, because you have no movement skills. Not having something to get you up and down ledges will feel really bad. Being able to free stuff up is huge. You could, again, you don't have to have the precision there. You could drop the precision and then shove the accuracy gem he had back on. The precision would be nice, though, because the precision would give him a bunch of crit chance as well, which would up his, like, it would up his Elite Overload uptime, basically. But by dropping that, he could then have a Stormbrand there, which will help proc everything, whatever. Could also go for a Timeless Jewel. I guess that'd be one of the advantages of taking both of these 3-pointers, is he could have a Timeless Jewel in one. So you could either have, like, Timeless Jewel, the minion instability, or you could shove one here and Timeless Jewel. So I would probably look into Timeless Jewels. Ones which stand out to me for this kind of a build. Divine Flesh, obviously, is pretty big. Makes his gearing kind of awkward. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is a slightly neater tree. And I do think that Chieftain really would be the way to go. I really do think Chieftain would be the way to go, personally. But, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that was kind of interesting. Even if you completely disagree with, like, everything I changed, we definitely can improve the gem setup. So I think, like, the 2 changes I made at the very start, just, like, swapping gems around, I think is a good change. And I think the regen while moving, because you're always moving when you're cycloning, is a decent change. So yes, anyway. I'm Tarke. Thank you very much for that, Liam. Hope you found it interesting. RF looks kind of decent with mirror tier gear. Anyway, I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.